Welcome to another edition of Weather Weenies. This installment is coming to you from the Wisp Resort in Western Maryland. Now, you might not have ever heard of Wisp. It's the only ski resort in Maryland. It's in Garrett County, which is way at the western tip of the state. It's a very unique place in terms of the meteorology. It's up about 2,500 feet. And believe it or not, this is a place that benefits from lake effect snow. Now, this is the worst map I've drawn yet of the United States. But if you imagine we've got Lake Erie here and Lake Huron's up here, Garrett County's down about there, and when the wind gets properly aligned, it can actually pick up moisture off of both lakes and drop it in the Allegheny Mountains here in Western Maryland. So they've already had 85 inches of snow here this season, and they're not done yet. Now, this past week has been a very exciting one from a meteorological standpoint. The pattern finally changed. I mean, we had a western ridge and an eastern trough most of the winter. The past 10 days or so, western trough, and we had a bit of an eastern ridge. Now that's a nice figure eight. When the trough was in the west, boy, we had some big storms coming ashore from the Pacific Ocean, and they were jacked up by moisture and energy from the El Nino out in the central Pacific, and boy, did they deposit some big-time amounts of snow, especially in the southern Sierras. Down at Mammoth Mountain, they were counting snow by the feet last week. They were getting a couple of feet a day, a couple of feet a day. And obviously they had some avalanche issues that they had to address, but the skiing is about perfect after you have 8 or 10 feet of snow in a week. The southern Rockies got a pretty good belt of snow. Central and northern Rockies, the impulses weren't as strong up here. The southern branch had most of the energy. But Jackson Hole, where we were last week, Jackson Hole was bony. There's no two ways about it. When I was there a week ago, they got 2 feet last week right after I left, you know, timing being everything. And their skiing is now back to a very, very good, if not excellent. Now, earlier this week, and folks, if you're listening to this, we have a gallery here today. This is being taped on Thursday, even though today's not Thursday. So just think about that for a minute. But earlier this week, a storm cut up on the west side of this ridge into the eastern Great Lakes. And what that did, after a pretty nice Saturday last weekend, it started to flood milder air up the coast, all the way from the Carolinas and really all the way into Quebec. Saturday was very cold, excuse me, in New England and upstate New York, but the temperature started to modify. And then this storm came out of the plains and it cut up to the west and it flooded the east coast with mild air. And there was rain all the way from Atlanta, Georgia to Burlington, Vermont early this week. That storm went up into Canada and then the floodgates opened. And Tuesday and Wednesday, the colder air started to come back, and now we are back in a pattern that's favoring an eastern trough and a western ridge. And I think we're going to see that sort of pattern hold for much of the month of February, because we are in the midst of a stratospheric warming episode, which correlates very well with an eastern trough and cold air in this part of the country. That's what happened in November. We had a stratospheric warming episode mid-November, and that tipped us off that the cold air was coming in December, and boy, did it ever come. So I think we're going to see the cold air dominate from this point on. But right now, surfaces are kind of firm in the east with the return of that cold air. So this would be a good time to contemplate taking your skis to the shop, taking your board to the shop, and getting a mid-season tune-up, because the surfaces, until we get another major snowstorm, they're going to be firm. The snowmakers have gotten to work this week after the cold air came back. The groomers have gotten to work, but those good edges will certainly stand you in good stead. So think about getting a mid-season tune-up. Now, what about the prospects for another major snowstorm? There's still energy coming ashore in the west, and we are going to see some snow in the central and southern Rockies during the upcoming weekend and into next week. But one of these systems, I think, is going to head east over the upcoming weekend, and by late in the weekend, it should be situated somewhere down around North Carolina. There's going to be plenty of cold air here, and that's why the storm's going to take the southerly track and not cut up to the lakes like the storm did early in the week. And I think this storm is going to turn the corner and come up toward New England and pass close enough to the east coast to at least bring a threat of significant snow from the southern Appalachians all the way up into New England. That would be around late Sunday into Monday, the week of the 1st of February. So I do think we're going to see a threat of snow, which could help alleviate some of the issues brought about by the rain that was followed by the cold air. But in the meantime, get those edges sharpened. Get out and enjoy the snow, because the base depths were so deep, the trail counts really aren't going to be affected a lot by the reversal of fortune we had early this week. You will see some natural snow trails and some glades shut down for a little while until we soften things up. But late in the weekend, we have the prospects of getting that sort of help. And looking forward into February, I expect the southern stream of the jet to stay active. The El Niño's weakening, but it will still send energy ashore. And as those storms belly under this trough, if we can get upper level energy to come out of the northern branch and phase in somewhere in the mid-south, that's when we'll get a big storm up the East Coast. And all the pieces are going to be in place for just such an occurrence as we move into February. It's just a matter of putting all the pieces together in the puzzle to bring about the picture that we're looking for. So that's this week's Weather Weenies from beautiful Wisp Resort in Garrett County, Maryland. I hope you enjoy your skiing and riding this weekend. And next week we'll see you from Saddleback, Maine, I think, as the Weather Weenies continue their winter tour. Have a great weekend.